All right, and we're recording. All right, I think all systems are go. Hello, welcome everyone. This is Maggie Ostara, and I am delighted that you are here today and that you have been able to come on Thursday instead of Wednesday. I was off at the hot springs for the last few days, which was really great for me. Just for me to relax some and have a little R&R. It's been actually a super really busy month for me. Well, COVID time for me. So it's good to have a little time to relax. So welcome, welcome. Say hello to those of you who are here coming on Zoom. I invite you to go ahead and say hello in the chat. Just say your name and where you're coming in from and your human design type if you know it. And yeah, and then also if you have any comments or questions as we're going along today, I really invite you to go ahead and put those in the chat. One of the things that I will be asking you for towards the end of our time together today, and if you need to leave early, I invite you and encourage you to do this sooner, which is to just say what your two main takeaways are from our conversation today, because it helps you to remember, helps you to take in the information and absorb it and integrate it, and then to recall it later. I'm an avid note taker too, so I encourage you to do that if that is helpful to you. I don't actually go back and read the notes later, but it just helps it go through my brain so that I remember. I also just encourage you to turn off notifications and put your phone on silent and to be focused rather than multitasking. If you're a manifesting generator, I guess maybe you can be multitasking, but otherwise, please, go ahead and be here so that you can actually receive what's being offered today. I appreciate that. So I want to just see if it's like we've got one person over there. I'm hoping that the people in the Facebook group are getting that the live is on this other page today. So that'd be great. All right. People, don't be shy. Go ahead and introduce yourself. And just make sure that you're including all panelists and attendees when you do that so that everybody can see who you are. All right, very good. So let me just get started with the things that I wanted to share with you today. So I have a few general comments that I want to make to kind of get us oriented to what we're talking about today. And then I have a series of slides that I want to share with you about the 3 key superpowers that I want to share. So, we all perceive the world through certain perspectives, through certain lenses. And this starts very, very early in life. When we are, little babies, even before that, we would say in breath work, but let's just say it starts even when we're babies and we're learning language. Language is one of the primary ways that we start to understand the world around us. And we actually segment things into different categories based on the words that we use for them. And I think about that for myself with my kid, and I said, oh, cup, honey, this is a cup, or mama, this is mama, right? So we all do that, and that's how we learn language, and it's a wonderful thing to learn. And at the same time, it creates a certain perspective. So people who have other languages that are their first language than the one that you have, they're going to have a different perception. And people who have multiple languages have the ability to be able to see through lots of different lenses. And that's kind of the most simplistic way of thinking about it. Human design provides us with a different lens to be able to understand our world and to be able to understand ourselves, to be able to understand each other, and to be able to understand the larger world around us. And our perception vitally impacts what's possible for us. And I do want to just note, we're in a really intense time here on planet Earth right now. And, both with the pandemic and with the economic impacts about what are happening as a result of the pandemic, which are also pulling our attention away from things like climate change. And then we've had uprisings around the world for racial justice and So there's a lot of different forces that are coming together right now. And it's easy to feel alone with the challenges. It's easy to feel small. It's easy to feel like whatever we do doesn't matter. And it's also easy to be afraid. And all of those things really impact our life experience and our well-being and make us feel, contracted, often reactive. Sometimes we try to control things outside of us to try to make us feel better. Okay. So I want to provide to you the framework that human design can give to you. And because I believe that it is a deeply empowering, ultimately empowering, actually, system. Because not so much because of the system itself, but because the system is always guiding us back to ourselves and to our own inner awareness and our own inner authority. And it helps us to learn how to dance with what I call the evolutionary flow of life, right? The larger forces that are moving through our solar system and through our planet at this time. And that we are, if you're tuned into astrology at all, you know that the astrology of this time is very intense, and it's very much like what happened in the 1960s. And so we're seeing a lot of reminiscent, not necessarily similar, somewhat similar, but reminiscent things that are happening now in terms of things coming to our awareness, coming into our consciousness that maybe we weren't paying enough attention to, and other things that seem to be coming to us from the outside and impacting us, and that one can feel very disempowered around. So I want to really encourage you to take human design in and what the benefits are and what it can provide you with, because it has deeply changed my life, and I have seen this happen with the people I do readings for and the coaching clients that I have. So I want to offer that to you today. It's really easy to get pulled into fear right now, and fear is stimulating our instinctual responses, which are not thoughtful, and they're definitely not divinely guided. They're coming from, our reptilian brain back here that is concerned about am I going to stay alive? And so we, as we continue to evolve, we move beyond that reaction of the reptilian brain, both into the cerebral cortex where we can think, but also into our relationship with the divine or with spirit or the universe or God, however source, however you want to name that larger intelligence that is always here guiding and supporting us. So I want to just give you a couple of little mental models. And let's see here. I want to just say hi. I want to just say hi to everyone on Facebook. Please say hello. And I want to just acknowledge those of you who are here. There's Maria from Scotland, and Cindy's here from Nashville, and Carol's here from Berkeley. Hi, Carol. And I know I can see that there are more of you here on Zoom. So please don't be shy. Go ahead and say hi and where you're coming in from and your human design type if you know. And if you don't know, that's totally fine. Okay. So yeah, I just want to welcome everybody. And hi, Lorna. Please do put in your comments and your ahas as we go along. So I want to offer a couple of mental models today. One has to do, and the reason I'm mentioning these mental models is that these are examples of how we historically have had our perception of what's possible to be like this, right? And so we want to be able to go, oh, wow, what are the things that haven't even been in our field of awareness that we can start to bring in? I was in a class with my teacher this morning, Karen Parker, and my human design mentor. And she was reminding us, which we forget because this is so not a part of our current culture, at least in terms of ideology. But she was saying before the last change in the human design chart, which was the end of the 18th century, which is of course when we had the United States was formed, right? We had the US Revolution, and then we had the French Revolution. We had monarchies that started to fall. We had a rethinking of our relationship to the, who we are as human beings, and where authority lies. So one way you can think of this is the sovereignty that had been invested in the monarch was now invested in the state, the United States, and then within each of the individual states. And it started this whole ideology of individualism, which actually is kind of a construct, a white construct, but that's a whole nother subject I won't get into now. But that before that time, the idea that you would have individual agency to have control over your personal story and the activities of your life, and to be able to go where you wanted to and do what you wanted to do and have the kind of profession you wanted and all of that, that didn't exist before the end of the 18th century. Like it just was not there. It was like you did what the church said, you did what your mother or your father did, you did what the noble that you lived around, or if you were a noble, you did what the king said. If you were a king, you were always trying to, or queen, you were trying to stay alive because people were trying to kill you all the time. It was like, it was a very, very different world back then. And remember, at one point, it was the agreed upon knowledge that the world was flat, right? And good old Galileo, disproved that, but also, or theorized that it was not true, and of course got killed for that, because it went so against the mental models of the time. Roger Bannister is another one I want to mention to you. He's the man who eventually in 1954 broke the 4-minute mile. But before that, people had been trying to break the 4-minute mile for like over 50 years. But Roger Bannister was an outlier, and he actually did not believe the training that was happening at the time. He didn't have like a high-end coach. He didn't take on the belief system or the mental model that it was not possible to break the 4-minute mile, which of course a lot of people had, even though they were training and trying to break it. And this is what happens for us as human beings sometimes, is we get imprinted with these limitations and these mental models. Even as we're trying to break them, we're kind of reinforcing them. And so Roger Bannister was like an outlier, and he did his own training. He had his own protocols. And sure enough, in 1954, he broke the 4-minute mile. And what's most interesting to me is that within 2 years, a whole bunch of people had. And now there've been over 1,000 people who have broken the 4-minute mile. So it was as much a mental construct as it was anything else. It wasn't a physical incapacity that we had. It was also theorized towards the end of the 19th century that people would melt literally if we went over 50 miles an hour, because the train was invented, and we were, if we were going to go over 50 miles an hour, that we were going to melt. And also that women, if we rode in trains or we rode bicycles, would have our wombs dislodge from the place in our pelvis and travel up through the body and come out of our mouths if we were to ride on trains or ride bicycles. Now, this was in medical journals. This was in the Lancet, which I actually just saw a reference to that having something to do with the coronavirus. And I was like, oh no, I don't know if I believe the Lancet. What was the other one? Oh, I had the other reference here. Hold on, let me see. I think I had it. Oh, I didn't put it in here. Anyway, the Lancet was one. Oh, the New England Journal of Medicine, okay, was saying this about women. So let's just think about like the mental models that we can have that would limit our ability to imagine what's possible. So I love human design because it really helps, blow open our perception and helps us to reorient to kind of a whole different way of a step of understanding who we are and what we can do. I mean, after all, someone had to imagine that there could be a train, and then someone had to imagine that there could be an airplane, and someone had to imagine we could go to the moon. And so we need to imagine that we can can actually handle climate change, or that we can handle the coronavirus, or that we can create a world that is equitable for everyone, where everyone has, a safe place to live and everyone has enough food and water, right? This is something that we can happen, but we need to imagine it and make it something that is a priority for us in order for it to come into being. So I just want to share a little bit about human design with you, or actually about my story with human design, and then I'll switch over to the slides. And just to give you a little bit of a sense of what happened for me, and then I have some client stories I'll share with you a little bit later about how things have shifted for them as a result of really embracing their human design. But for me, it was a huge mental shift. And so even though I had accomplished a lot in my life, I'd gone to graduate school, gotten a PhD, gotten a prestigious job at Columbia University, published my first book at a major university press. And then after I realized I wasn't designed to work for anyone, which just turns out was part of my human design, but I didn't know that back in 1997 when I left my job. And then I've had a series of pretty successful businesses since then. But I have fried myself like multiple times, really fried myself. And I didn't know why. I didn't understand what that was all about, because I am a person of a lot of energy. And so it didn't really make sense to me as to why sometimes I could be so on purpose, have so much energy and accomplish so much. And then at others, it was like I was running uphill all the time until finally I hit a wall at the top of the hill. My mixed metaphor. So, and when I came to understand human design, I came to the superpowers that I'm going to share with you today, plus many others. And I had no idea that I had these superpowers. I had absolutely no idea, because I wasn't introduced to super design. I kind of like that, human design then. And if I had known, my life would have gone so incredibly differently. And I want to affirm for you that you are not alone. I am not alone. We are not alone. That in fact, we are individually and collectively supported by this greater flow of life that is moving through, like I said, our solar system, our planet, and each of our lives individually, and us collectively as a humanity. And it is informing and influencing us in a variety of different ways. And whatever this isn't about a religion, okay? I'm not here to make any comment about religion. Whatever your religious background is, whatever your religious practices are, I totally support. They're right for you. What this is about is a more spiritual point of view that says that there is a higher intelligence, or what I often call super consciousness, that that is our creator, that has been creating for billions and billions of years beyond our comprehension, and that we are in relationship to that force, the creative force, and also to different expressions of that creative force that have been here to support and help create our earth, and to create humanity, and to support us throughout our entire development, and the development indeed of Gaia and of our solar system. Whether you want to call these angelic forces, or depending on what your kind of affiliations are, you might think of them differently. I think of them as angelic forces, and that they're here. We're not alone. We've never been alone, and that our suffering and our problems a lot come from believing that we're alone. Chances are that's not a new thing that you've heard. This is a core teaching of all spiritual traditions around the world. And I want to just reinforce it here, not so much as in a religious context or in a specifically spiritual, the way you might have thought about that at other times, but to say that human design actually gives us a way it gives us a map and as a guide to our soul curriculum, individually and collectively, what is our evolutionary path, and that I, even though I had studied a lot of spiritual traditions and became a teacher of advanced meditation called Awakening Your Light Body, all kinds of things, I never had the kind of explicit instruction and explicit map to help me understand how I can connect with super consciousness and what my soul path is, really, my life purpose and my soul path. And that's what human design gave me. And I think that that's what human design can give to you. All right. I think that's what I wanted to share. Yeah, that's what I wanted to share. So I want to go ahead and keep saying hello to, there's a few of you more who've come on to Zoom. I invite you to go ahead and say hello. And I'm going to just say hello to those of you who are on Facebook. And I think maybe some people are over on the other. Let me just see here. Quick check over here. Because for those of you who don't know, have been teaching over there in the other page in the group for a while. Oh, well, I'm not sure if they're confused. I hope not. But when you do new things, sometimes that happens for a little bit. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pull up our slides. Let me just make sure I've got this in place. Yep. Okay. There we go. All right, so discover 3 key superpowers in your human design. So I always like to start with the human design mandala. It's just so incredibly beautiful. And it reminds us of the origins of the chart, that it really is relying on both Western and Eastern astrology, that it is drawing on the hexagrams of the I Ching, which is what the little hashtags are around the outside. That's where the number of the gates comes from that are out here. And it also helps us just to see the body graph here, which it draws on both the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life, which has to do with how the energies relate to each other inside of the body graph, and then also with the centers, which are related to the chakra system, but that are an evolution of that. I want to let you know here in the outset, and I will come back to this late towards the end of the slide part of today, to let you know that I have opened up my Activate Your Superpowers class, which is available as of today. And I will talk about this more later on. I do want to give this to you because I know sometimes people have to leave early. You can find the registration page at sovereigntybydesign.com/AYSP-program. Okay. And, go ahead and check it out if you want to. I will be giving you 2 special bonuses at the end, though, so I would encourage you to stay on if you can. All right. So conditioning can happen anywhere. And conditioning can impede your ability to feel, acknowledge, and utilize your superpowers. Now, basically what I was talking before about mental models is conditioning. It's one of the ways we have conditioning. We also have conditioning in ways that are super helpful, like learning how to walk or learning how to talk or, learning how to drive a car. Those are things that are helpful conditioning by and large. But there are conditioning, the mental models, that limit our ability to be able to have new perspectives. And those of you who have defined ajnas, if you know what that is, it's harder sometimes for you to see different perspectives. So that's just one thing for you to know about if you have that particular center defined in your chart. And human design guides us to re-examine our mental models and opens up our perception and our horizon of possibility. And so some of the things I'm going to talk to you about today have to do with both the superpowers and also the conditioning that can get in the way, because this is where we can really get the value of what human design has to offer us. Okay, So the first superpower I want to talk about is authority. Authority. So everyone has an inner authority according to human design. Even if it says no inner authority on your chart, just for those of you who have that, everyone has a type of authority in human design. Our authority is how we're designed to dance with the evolutionary flow of life. And this flow of life wants to support us and to guide us. We do need to be receptive and willing to be able to listen to or to feel into or to activate and utilize this authority. In order to do that, our powerful minds, because we do have extraordinarily powerful minds, must be in an appropriate relationship to this large flow. Okay. And if you think about, the flow of life that's coming through the planet and through our lives is so much bigger than any of us is individually, right? Or even that we are collectively. And yet we have this tendency to work just with our minds and to think that our thoughts are kind of the be all and end all, and what we can think through or what we can figure out is actually the highest form of intelligence. And human design really shows us that that is not the case. However, this isn't easy, to have our minds be in right relationship to our own inner authority, to our own inner being, to our own felt sense, to our intuition, and to our guidance that is coming to us through that flow of life, or through our, like, I have an angelic presence that I work with on a regular basis. You may have other kinds of your upstairs team that is there to support you, whether that is Jesus and Mary, or whether that is God, or if that is Kuan Yin, or Lakshmi, or Tara, or Allah, or whomever, whatever it might be, or Gaia herself, right? However you might think about the different expressions of this greater consciousness that is helping to support and guide us. That needs to really be more in the director role, in the guiding role, and to have our minds be the part of us that will take that guidance and take that information, that inspiration, imagination, what comes through our imaginations, and helps to make it real in the material plane. Our minds are primarily about that aspect, is how do we make things real in the material plane? But it is not about the higher intelligence, and it's not able to guide us from the highest place. So that may be triggering a little bit for you in your mental models. And I invite you, if that's the case, just to hold that as a possibility for you. So as I said, everyone has a specific authority, which is how you're designed to make decisions in concert with your inner being. And your authority is one of your superpowers. Please understand, when you practice using your authority, everything in your life becomes easier, less stressful, more satisfying, and yes, even more prosperous and even healthier. Yeah, it really does. Absolutely, that has been the case for me, and I've seen it happen for, like I said, people I do readings for and clients. So I just want to mention briefly here the types of authority, which is how you're designed to make decisions. Now, I do want to say, for those of you who are members of the Sovereignty by Design Facebook group, that there are a series of trainings that I have done before my Wednesday webinars. It also there's one there that talks about strategy, which is also how we're designed to dance with life. And there's also another one that's all about authority. So if you want to find out a little bit more about that, you can. In addition to that, my Activate Your Superpowers class goes into even more depth than what I do in the Wednesday webinars. And so you can really get a deep understanding about this for you from either one of those resources. So every different human design type, there are 5 different human design types, we each have our own type of authority. For me, I'm a generator. 70% of the population are either pure generators, which is what I am, or manifesting generators. And we're all designed to make decisions with our sacral response, which is basically what's happening in our hara, or our womb space if you're a woman, It's in that what we in the Indian chakra system is the second chakra, although it's really kind of, it's not the same as that. But it's kind of that place where we say, trust your gut, right? It's that deep part inside of us. So 70% of us are designed to be able to really be making the decisions with that. And the sacral is the place where we interface with our inner being, or with that larger flow of life, or with whatever type of super consciousness that you connect with. And it speaks to us in a kind of nonverbal way. And I experience it very much somatically in my body, but I'm a really somatic person. But it's really about this kind of response that is always kind of guiding us. It's like, oh, go this way, or this way, tomorrow, okay. And I even today was selecting a time to give a presentation in a online conference that I'm going to be doing towards the end of August. And I was looking at the timing that was available, and I even used it there. I was like, none of the other times. It was like so easy for me to go through and just get that kind of response. A lot of times I also get, it's not necessarily even verbal for me. This is a superpower that you have if you're a generator. And like I said, most of us are generators. Not that that makes us better or more important, but it does make us a larger part of the population. And it is something that we can learn to utilize at any time. But the big thing we have to learn, and I've worked with lots of generators to help them be able to get in touch with their sacral authority, is you have to get out of your head. Because we've been so trained to make our decisions with our minds, right? Just think about it. Like, how were you trained in school to make decisions, right? It was to gather information, gather data, analyze what you learned, categorize it, make lists of pros and cons, decide which is, which has the greater pluses and minuses, right? What's the better strategy? All of those are left brain strategies that we have been trained into. Whether you have a lot of what we call the logic or the pattern circuit in human design defined in your chart or not, everybody's been trained into believing that logic and analysis and strategy are the way to make decisions, right? It's like, use your head, right? And in human design, no, actually, there's no inner authority which is about using your head. Not a single one. And this is why I said earlier, in some ways, one of the hardest things to be able to do to access your superpowers, these superpowers I'm going to talk about today, is being able to move out of your head more into your human design. And your authority is a huge, huge superpower that you have. Because just think about how often you need to make decisions for things, right? And especially now in such a time of uncertainty, when the ways that maybe in the past you would have made decisions, you don't feel like you have the same reference points, right? You don't have the same signposts. You don't know if your life experience is so reliable a source for you to be able to go to in order to make decisions. Like, well, in the past I did this, but now in our current situation, how much is that is actually relevant? So if you think about how significant it is for you to be able to know how to make the best decisions for you with being informed by super consciousness, right? Or your inner being, if you choose to think of that that way, or your soul, or with help from your guardian angel, whatever the kind of greater than human, greater than material, non-physical energy is that can help guide you, right? How that part can bring you direction that your mind probably can't. And that, if I just circle back to my own story for a moment, was the thing that led me to fry myself so many times, because I did not know how to make decisions this way. I did not know how to do that. And I didn't do that. I made decisions with my mind. I also initiated, which is, I'm not designed to initiate either because I'm a generator. I also initiated a lot. I initiated all the time, which is not the way I'm designed to work. I'm designed to respond. We're not talking about strategy today, but anyway, that's true for me. If you're a generator, that's true for you. Or a manifesting generator, still true for you. Then I also was making decisions with my head all the time in strategy, right? And so it wasn't, a lot of times it wasn't giving me the right information. It was a good idea. It seemed to make sense in the calendar, right? But it wasn't, I didn't actually have the energy for it. And that is the thing that the sacral can tell you as a pure generator or manifesting generator, is whether or not you have energy for that, and whether or not that is really the right decision for you based on, you know, what's happening in your life right now. It's a huge superpower. Now, every type has their own, not always their own, but every type and every person has their own authority, and it varies a little bit. Like for generators, pure generators and manifesting generators, it's always the sacral. Even if you're emotionally defined, I'll come to that later on, it's still the sacral. Okay, so that's always true. But for projectors and manifestors, it differs. For reflectors, it's always the same. So let me go through that for the other types of authorities. So the spleen, which can be a type of authority for manifestors and for projectors. And actually on my printout, it says that I'm splenic, I have splenic authority. But I really consider the sacral because the sacral has so much power in it. And also because the sacral, I have the ability to ask yes, no questions of my sacral. Whereas with the spleen, you don't really have that. It's more of a intuitive sense. And I do have a very strong intuitive sense, and it comes from the knowing circuit, which I'll mention a little bit later. Let's see what time it is. Okay, because I could go on talking about authority for like another hour. I gotta not do that. Okay. And the spleen doesn't have as clear a direction as the sacral has. So even if you have splenic authority on your chart, if you're a generator of any type, I would really encourage you to use your sacral. But for manifestors and projectors who have their spleen defined, then this is, and this would be for a manifestor who has their motor going through the spleen. It's coming from the root through the spleen up to their throat. Otherwise, they would have something else. And the spleen is the center for intuition, and it's also the center for instinct, which can be based in fear. So you really have to look, if you have splenic authority, if your intuition gets colored by fear, because then maybe it's coming more out of a instinctual reactive place than it is out of a purely more intuitive place, which is what I call that connected into super consciousness. And it will never, the information and the direction, the guidance that comes to you from there will never come from fear. So that's how you can differentiate those. Okay, so manifestors or projectors might have that. Ego is usually for manifestors, but not always. And so the ego is when the will center is connected to the throat. And the ego is a kind of will authority. It's like this powerful, you know, I will go out and make this happen, which is something that is characteristic of ego manifestors. Self-projected and mental projected are for projectors. That basically is either you have this center right here, which is called the will center. Can you see, or sorry, the G center, if you can see that here, right? Which is part of the heart, is half of the heart. That's what the self-projected, because it's about your identity. It's about your lovability. It's about your direction in life. Or the mental projected is when you've got your ajna connected to your throat, if you are a projector. And so you've got a lot of ideas coming in. Okay, so whatever it is for the projectors really make their decisions best when they talk through what they're considering. Ideally, they have a high quality listener who's going to really be listening, reflecting back to them, helping them sort through what their thoughts are, and not giving advice. So if you're a projector or you love a projector, see if you can either seek out or be a high quality listener for the projector in your life, or for you to help make decisions. because you generally will be able to call on the wisdom that you have developed, because projectors, depending on their definition, are designed to be very wise, and they're designed to be orchestrators, right? Um, and but they need to be able to call on all of that, and they do that through talking. And that's what the self-projected or mental projected is all about. Whereas but again, let me just say before I move on to reflectors, for projectors, they're not doing it by figuring it out in their minds. They're not doing it through logic or through reason or through analysis or strategy. They're doing it by talking it out. And by talking it out, they're actually accessing their inner wisdom or their inner being. They just have a different mechanism for that than generators do or for manifestors do. Okay. Reflectors are really connect with the moon. They have a lunar authority. And it's not so much that the moon is beaming down direction to them, as it is they're taking the time over a lunar cycle, and sometimes more than one, if it's a big decision, for them to really feel into what is right for them. It's more of a feeling, right? It's like, what does it feel like today? Because projectors have no definition in their centers. And so they pick up a lot of energy. They're extraordinarily receptive and sensitive beings. And so they need time so that they know, so that clarity can come, so that they know that they're not just being influenced by somebody who they're around. Now, let me mention this emotional authority. If you may have that on your chart, says you're emotionally defined, and that is your authority. Now, a lot of people are confused about this. If you have this on your chart, it doesn't mean that you're designed to make decisions emotionally. A lot of people get confused about that. It's actually just the opposite. What it means is that you are an emotional being, and because you're an emotional being, you're going to have an emotional wave. Okay, it's just the way you're designed. It's not bad. It's not good. It's not bad. It just is. Some people try to make it bad because they don't like the low part of the wave where they're feeling a little more melancholy or a little more blue. But just remember, beautiful art has been created out of melancholy, right? Or feeling blue. So there's actually a lot of benefit to that lower part of the wave. But when it comes to decision making, you want to ask the question multiple times along your wave so that you're getting clarity that it's not your emotional state that is really impacting your decision. You want to get a clear yes wherever you are on that emotional wave. So for generators, you need to ask multiple times, your sacral multiple times. If you're a projector, you need to talk it through. If you're a manifestor, it's good to slow down. Manifestors tend to operate really, really fast, as do manifesting generators. And for both of you, if you're emotionally defined, you need to slow down and kind of tune in over a little bit of time to make sure that you're getting an accurate response that's consistent, because it might be accurate in that moment, but it's being influenced by your emotions. I hope that makes sense. Okay. And then of course, reflectors already know that they need to take time. So before I move on, I want to just reiterate that this is a huge, huge superpower for you. And something that I feel is one of the biggest gifts that human design can give us, because it actually gives us a specific way to move outside of our conditioned way of making decisions and our conditioned way of using our minds, which compared to super consciousness are pretty small, as miraculous as our minds are. And I love mine. I use it all the time. And I want you to love yours too. But it is, I heard this from Gangaji once, and did not originate with her, but that the mind makes a beautiful servant and a terrible master, right? The mind is meant to be a servant of our greater consciousness, our own soul self, our own spirit infused personality, right? Our soul inspired personality. It's not meant to be the one calling the shots. Okay, let's all take a big breath. I'm gonna take a sip of water. Okay, and go ahead and put in the chat if you have any comments about that. Oops. Put that on there. Uh, Oh, I'm just going to read this one here. Yes, it's a cosmic joke, really, that a mental projector like me is not to make decisions using my mind. I used to consider pros and cons in my head, but not anymore. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Yeah, it's true. I know. Right? Um, but it's not that you're not meant to use your ideas. It's that you're not to let all those ideas that you have make decisions for you. And that's a good distinction to make. Okay. So let's move on here. So the second superpower that I want to talk about today is your definition and openness, which are qualities of energy and how we experience them. So in the human design chart, there are 9 centers, 36 channels, and 64 gates. And these are all places that can either be defined or open. Let's just take a look at a couple of human design charts here. So here we actually have a mental projector over here. And here we have a generator with the 4 motors. Now, these two people are going to experience their lives very, very differently. Now, let me reiterate something I'm sure you've heard me say before, which is that everyone has the whole chart. Everyone has the energies that are everywhere throughout this whole chart. Let's actually just take a look at this for a second, okay? Everyone it relates to all of these hexagrams and gates that are going around here because they're constantly being activated as the sun, as the solar system does its beautiful dance. Let's put it that way, okay? And everyone has a relationship to all of these energies. What's different, okay, is whether or not it's colored in your chart, which we call defined, if it's colored in, or if it's open, which is what's white. So the 9 centers, which are here, right? 9 centers, 36 channels, which is what connects them together. And then the 64 gates, which is the little numbers that are here. Those are always the same on everybody's chart. So you can see an example on the left and on the right, the numbers are all in the same place. All of the channels are in the same place. The centers are all in the same place, all of that, okay? What's different is that for this person, these are colored in, and then we also have all of these different gates, okay, that are what we call defined, which means that they're colored in. And on this person has a very different kind of chart, right? Where all of the energies that are defined are lower down in the chart. This one is all upper in the chart. So this person is going to have a lot of thinking, and they're going to have they have quite a bit of the sensing circuit, which I'll talk about in a minute. And so they're going to feel a lot also, and they're pretty plugged into super consciousness here. You can see all of these different gates here are activated, but there's a lot of activity going on up here. So the places that are colored in your chart means you have an ongoing, ready, reliable access to those energies that are colored in. And you have a consistent, even fixed way of experiencing those energies. Whereas the parts that are white in your chart are the parts where the energies come and go depending on who you're around. So if you have a place that's white in your chart and you come around somebody else who has it colored in their chart, you pick up on their energy and you amplify it. And then you get to experience that energy. So you actually do get to experience it. It's just that it's not consistent for you and it's not reliable, because when that person goes away, that energy is going to go away. Now, over time, you can develop a whole range of experiences of what those different energies felt like. And you can feel that in the centers, right? You can feel that in the channels. You can feel it in the individual gates. Okay, so we're talking over 100 different archetypes. And so when we start to really dive into our definition and our openness, which is a big part of what I talk about in the Activate Your Superpowers class. I think there's about 4 or 5 classes out of 10 that address the question of definition and openness and how we work with that. Makes a huge difference in how you experience your life. Now, this person over here has all of the motors or all the engines in the chart defined in her chart. These are both women. I know who they are. They were clients of mine. And she's all of her, the motors fine, which means this person is going to have a huge amount of energy, providing that they don't work against their chart, okay? Whereas this person has no motors defined at all, okay? None. which means that this person is going to be needing to pick up energy from other people and amplifying it in order to have a lot of energy. Now they have to be careful not to do it too much, because that can fry their circuits, because they're really not designed to hold on to that much energy all the time. This person is going to have a lot of great ideas. Like I said, is plugged into super consciousness. This is a projector who's going to be able to help orchestrate and design and facilitate and help people find their way in what they're doing in their lives, and can orchestrate teams and things like that. Whereas this person is really one of the workers of the world. So your definition really helps direct you to where you, to what your qualities of life are, and how you can best take care of yourself. What are the resources, the inner resources that you have to utilize, how you intersect and interact with other people in the best possible way. Knowing your definition and your openness is a huge superpower. Like for me, I have an open throat. Both of these people have an open throat. I discovered that like there's certain liabilities that I have as having an open throat, but it's become one of my superpowers, because I know how to utilize it now. Okay, seeing what time it is, and I told you I could really talk forever about I think I talked too long about authority. So I want to talk about circuitry, and then I want to let you know about this course that I'm going to do. And I want to answer your questions also, both about anything I brought up today and also about the course. So let's talk about circuitry for a few minutes. So circuitry, it has to do with the overall orientation, your overall orientation to your energy. And your circuitry influences how you experience life, your relationships, your happiness, and your work in the world. Now, circuitry is a complex subject, and I don't have time to dive into it. I took a whole really long class on this, actually twice, with Karen about circuitry. But I want to introduce it to you, because it is when you get a human design reading, do ask, get one from me or from someone else, and do find out about your individual circuitry, because it's a huge superpower for you. And I do have a full class on this in the Activate Your Superpowers class. It is, it's just one class, because like I said, it's much more complex, but it is something that I always include in my readings. Okay, so there are three main circuits in the human design chart. One is individual circuitry. People of individual circuitry are mutative, which means they're here to bring change. They're going to be different. They're not going to be like other people. They're creative. They tend to be self-referential rather than other-referential. They often don't feel like they fit in. And it's the quality that makes us human, because it's that ability to bring change and to make bring new things into the world, to be able to tap into super consciousness. This is a place where we tap into super consciousness right here. I have this 61 defined in my chart. I actually have a lot. Most of my circuitry is individual circuitry. And when I learned that, it made such a huge difference for me in terms of understanding myself. Then there's also tribal circuitry, which is very different than individual circuitry, as you might imagine. Tribal circuitry is about who we know we are as a people. It's about belonging. It's about being more other referential and more group focused. It's about reproduction, both reproducing our children and our families, but also reproducing our values and our sense of who we are, right? So education is here. Resources is here. We need to be able to reproduce and have sustainably to have resources in order to be able to take care of our families and our tribes, right? So people who have both individual circuitry and tribal circuitry sometimes have a little bit of tension, what I call creative tension between them, right? And you can feel how that goes. I have some of that for myself also. And it definitely influences how you experience life if you have more individual circuitry or more tribal circuitry. And then we have collective circuitry, which is, so logic and science is here. And so is research, so is the scientific method, okay? This is the left brain right side of the body circuitry. But then we also have the sensing circuit, which is the right brain and the sensing and part of the human design chart and of the body. So it's really interesting that collective circuitry has both. It's that right brain, left brain part, right? And it is about the sensing, the intuition, and also about the strategy and the logic. And it's not that logic or strategy or analysis doesn't have any place, because it absolutely does. It's just that it's not the number one way to make decisions or the number one way for us to interact. Okay. And so, but the collective circuitry is really about the bigger things in life. Okay. It's about the big impact, or so institutions are here, government is here, infrastructure is here, democratic leadership is right here. So it's really about those bigger things. I have very little of this in my chart. I have just a little bit. I have very little of this in my chart, much more individual and tribal. So your life, you'll experience your life differently depending on which of these three circuits that you have. But when you understand them and you know how to utilize them, for one thing, it helps you make sense of life in a way that you maybe have been perplexed before. Like, I never understood why I didn't really fit in, and why I always have this drive to always be creating new things. And I don't like to repeat things. I like to always be creating something new. Well, it's my individual circuitry. Okay. So your three key superpowers that we talked about today are your authority, your definition, your openness, and your circuitry. So the Activate Your Superpowers class, which I have just opened up again, includes classes on your authority, your definition, and openness, and your circuitry. Plus, it also includes classes on all of these other superpowers that you have. The first class is about the human design chart. But then we go into the types and the superpowers of the types. We go into the 9 centers, and we have actually 2 classes on the centers. One is about the 4 motors, okay, that I showed you in that other chart. And because they're so important and they're so vital for your energy, and for your the way that you move through the world, and whether or not you have a motorized throat. That's for manifestors and manifesting generators. And to understand the difference between a defined throat and a motorized throat. Anyway, that's more detailed than you need to know right now. But anyway, there's 2 classes on centers. So one is on the 5 motorized, non-motorized centers, and then the 4 motors, and what are the superpowers that are in each of the centers, and how you can learn to access them, whether you have them defined or not. We also have, I don't even have it on here. Oh, well, yeah, another class on definition and openness. We have a couple of those. And then the Incarnation Cross, which is really your guide to your life purpose. So many people come to me for human design wanting to know more about their life purpose. The profiles, that has to do with the lines of the hexagrams, the 3 primary circuits, and then the art of reading the chart. This is a great class for you. I've talked to a few people, and when I taught this earlier in the year, there were a number of people who wanted to be able to use human design with their clients. Now, this is obviously not a professional training program, okay? It's, I studied for years to be able to become a specialist. But you can learn enough about human design. For example, if you're an astrologer, astrologers love this. But also if you're a coach, if you're a teacher, if you are in the transformational fields in any particular way, knowing these fundamentals and these superpowers about human design is a great way for you to be able to support your clients. And you'll know enough from taking this class to be able to dabble in that, okay? And you'll be able to give a simple reading, okay? It's not going to be an in-depth reading, but you'll be able to point out a few things to people. And even just knowing what their type is, their strategy, and their authority, just knowing those things will help you to understand your clients much better, and to how to work with them. Okay. So I just want to say that for that. Okay, so the Activate Your Superpowers is 10 classes. It's delivered via video trainings. It includes audios, videos, slides, and then worksheets. Every class has a worksheet except for the first class and the last one. So you get to do your studying on demand. You get, as soon as you register, you get the first class, and then you have a week, and then you'll get your next class. So the classes are dripped out every week. Is there anything else I want to say about that? No, you just really get to take it at your own pace. You don't have to do it every week if you don't, like probably you're going to go on vacation. Maybe, something else is going to happen in your life and you don't have time to do it every single week, but they'll be dripped out every week. And then I am including Q&A calls, coaching sessions with me every single month. Okay, so those are 90 minutes long. You get to bring anything that you have. You can be anywhere in the course. And I'm definitely going to do these through the end of the year, but I may be doing them longer than that, because I'm going to continue to offer this class. All right. So I want to just let you know that I am, for those of you who are here, and I want to give the first 5 people to register a 15-minute reading with me as a bonus. And I know I'm actually going over, so I will include this in the email that I will send out after this as well. But then you also, so that's for those of you who are like, yeah, you know what, I know I want this, I'm going to go ahead and get it now. And so the first 5 people will get that 15-minute reading with me. But for all of you, and you have up to a week to do this, because some of you are emotionally defined, or you want to take a little more time to feel into it. You have a week to take $200 off of this course, bringing it down to $197. Okay, it's usually $397, and you have that through August 6th. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so I can put some of these into the chat for you. So it's in Sovereignty by Design, AYS-program. Okay, so that's where you go to find out about it, and save 200 is the coupon code that you use to take $200 off your registration. All right, so let me just see, we have a couple of questions. Some of you've had to leave, that's fine. As you know, the recording of this will be up. Okay, so we have a question. So here is time. I hope for those of you who can stay, I see there's a bunch of you who are still here. Please do go ahead and put in your ahas for today, your takeaways from today, and also any questions or comments that you have. All right. So Sherry says, would you please say more about how projectors have authority in the spleen? Intuition seems difficult to come by, especially in fear, as you said. So when you're facing a fearful situation, going into a store with a face mask to protect us against being infected, we are in fear. So could our intuition kick in as to where to linger and where to move through if someone just coughed in that space, for example? Okay, so one thing I want to suggest to you, Sherry, is that you don't have to be in fear, ever. Okay, even with the COVID-19, even going into a grocery store with a mask on, you do not have to be in fear. And I'm not here to make you wrong if that is a fearful experience for you. But what I want to let you know is that you have a choice over your responses to any situation. And this is part of what human design helps us to understand, is that fear is coming out of an instinctual response, okay, which is, am I going to die in this moment? And it is projecting that fear into your current situation. The likelihood of you contracting COVID-19 with a mask on in a grocery store when everyone else has a mask on is extremely low. Extremely, okay? People are contracting COVID-19 because they are being in large groups of people or in close quarters with people for long periods of time. That's primarily how it's getting transmitted, okay? It's not really getting transmitted in this type of a situation. And yet, there is so much fear that is going around, okay? So what I want to suggest to you is to spend a little time with your own inner being, and for you to talk this out with someone as a projector to be like, what is this? Why do I have this fear? Like, and keep asking yourself, why do I have this fear? Why do I have this fear? Why do I have this fear? Okay, because it's probably located somewhere other than this particular situation. This particular situation is triggering another experience that you have that's embedded in your psyche, and it's triggering that fear. Okay, probably. Now, I want to make sure I actually understand your question, Sherry. Intuition seems difficult. You're right. Intuition is very difficult to come by if you're in fear. Because if you're in fear, you're not actually accessing you're shutting off your relationship to super consciousness, and you're shutting off your relationship even to your cerebral cortex, because you're operating from this reptilian part of your brain if you're in fear, and it's very difficult. Okay, so you want to be able to calm yourself, do breathing practices, grounding yourself, talking to yourself, being with someone else who you can feel like is an anchor for you, really working with your fear so that the intuition actually can come in. Sherry, tell me if you're still online. Please tell me if that is speaking to you. Okay. Okay, sure, Carol, it was great to have you. Let me know if you have any questions. Sounds like you don't. She just says, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate hearing about another perspective. All right, sounds good. All right, guys. Well, I think we are gonna wind up here soon. Let me know. Sherry, did I answer your question? You said thank you. I know it's because I went over the hour, but let me know if I answered your question or not. All right, dear. So I'm just going to reiterate, go to sovereigntybydesign.com/AY hyphen SP, no, AYSP hyphen program, and check it out. So Maria says, masks have a proven negative psychological effect on us. So I honestly cannot imagine how you can access your intuition when you're wearing a mask. You know what? I don't know. I know that is true for some people. I don't experience it. I'm not living in fear, and I'm not in fear when I'm wearing my mask. So the thing is when you say it's a proven negative psychological effect, that may be true for some people. But again, do not allow yourself to be slotted that way. Do not allow yourself to be slotted 100% that way. I do think that happens for some people. And I do think the fact that everybody's walking around wearing a mask is making people more afraid. I do believe that. But what I want to end with today is one of your superpowers is to be able to tap into your intuition, to receive the guidance from your inner being, and to be living in a state of grace that provides you with, that if you're living in a state of fear, you don't have access to. Okay, I'm going to leave you with that piece for today. Many blessings. Much love. Bye for now.